I'm here with my spoiler-free review of James Mangold's Logan, which is the third of the solo Wolverine films. And I think the thing you can safely say about that film is that it's by far the best of the three. The original first Wolverine solo movie is kind of terrible. It's that one with Deadpool, not Deadpool in it. The second one is the one set in Japan, which is kind of great for half an hour or so, but then turns into a really generic, boring fighting film and ends with him fighting a big CGI robot thing. But the third one, that's, by far the best of the three and is interesting, and clearly I'm trying to take it in a different direction, have a different tone and do new and exciting things. This must be like the 9th Wolverine movie or something, is it? If you count the original 3 X-Men movies and then the 3 First Class movies and then his 3 spin-offs, that's 9 times around for Hugh Jackman, so, he deserves marks just for sticking with it for that far. Logan is an attempt to have a tough, adult kind of offbeat western kind of tinged take on the character, which apparently owes a lot to the comic books, although I've never read them. And certainly for its first act, it has a good go at that kind of thing. It's quite ambiguous, it's quite character based, it's got a sort of a nasty tone. The performance from Patrick Stewart as the aging Professor X, who's losing his mind but still has his powers, is really interesting. They set up a really interesting villain. I've never seen the actor before. Boyd Holbrook, is it? Apparently he's in Narcos, but he's got an interesting tone to him, and he's giving quite a big but not too big performance. Jackman is really engaged and is really with it. Stephen Merchant, bizarrely, the guy who co-wrote The Office, turns up as a mutant. And it all feels really interesting, and it's definitely going somewhere. The violence is really tasty and nasty. For the whole film, you get to see claws stabbing through people's brains and stuff like that, which is, is really fun. They use it quite a lot, but it gives it a much more mature tone. The swearing is a bit like, a teenager who's just learned some swear words and is now using them when Patrick Stewart is, using the F word and stuff. It feels a bit weird, and it makes you go, well, why weren't they doing that in the other X-Men films where Magneto was about to destroy the world, but nevertheless. And then it goes on from there, but really, for me, it doesn't quite make good on its promise. It maintains its tone, and you always like Jackman. He's always very beautiful, even with his big grizzly grey beard, but who am I to talk? I haven't got a beard, but I've got grey. But really, as it goes, it becomes rather more generic. Richard E. Grant turns up, as an evil scientist, and by the end, we're into a kind of Mad Max style thing where Wolverine's trying to earn his redemption, and they avoid the whole fighting a big CGI monster thing that you get in Wonder Woman or Batman versus Superman or the last Wolverine movie, but it does become a lot more generic. And really, as I was watching it, I kept thinking, this isn't, if this is supposed to be the big payoff for Wolverine, and this is where we say goodbye to him, and this is where we find more depth to the character, it isn't really his story. The issues that he's dealing with are not things about his past. The narrative doesn't tie into the things that we've learned about him before. It's very much that he reacts to things that turn up, and at the end he's, I won't spoil it for you, but the idea is that he's attempting to find redemption, but not for anything that we've ever seen before. So I never found that engaging, and he's quite reactive as he goes. And it did make me think, watching it, that as much as Jackman is really charismatic and he's always been sort of the heart of the X-Men movies, Wolverine is actually not the most interesting X-Men character. And by far the most interesting character in those films for me has always been Magneto, and the stuff in First Class, which has young, sexy, beautiful Michael Fassbender hunting down Nazis after the Second World War, is by far the toughest and most interesting stuff. And Magneto would have been a more interesting spin-off character to have, or even one of the others, because although Wolverine is iconic, maybe he's not actually the most interesting as you go. So it sort of squanders some of its promise, but it's entertaining. It doesn't fall into some of the traps that it might have done. It avoids having too much CGI. It has some crisp, nasty violence. And you do feel a sort of poignancy at the fact that you've known the character for so long. It's weird. I remember watching the first X-Men movie at the cinema with my best mate and being so excited that a decent superhero movie had come along, because there really hadn't been one since Tim Burton's Batman, I think. So, it's worth a watch. The tone is nice, it looks nice, but as with a lot of these things, it sets up a lot of interesting ideas, particularly the relationship between him and Professor X, but then that doesn't really become the heart of the story. And although it gives Patrick Stewart some interesting stuff to do, again, he isn't really part of the narrative. So it's enjoyable. I enjoy the violence. It's too long, like every film ever made in the current age. It's like 2.25 hours, and it could be a quarter of an hour less than that at the very least. But it's definitely the best of the three, but still X-Men 2 and maybe, most of the First Class movie and Days of Future Past are the best in this series. I don't know why they didn't just ask Michael Fassbender to, stop snogging what's her name and and do a solo spin-off instead. Who can blame him? Well, Logan, it's worth a watch, but yeah, it still ends up disappointing, and my flatmate fell asleep. What can you do?